Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. A very warm welcome to yet another session in our Weekend with Wisdom series. In this series, we are discussing the topic Brahmalakshana, how to define the world's cause. We are meeting for the second session in this series. Let's begin this session with a prayer. Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Shankaram Lokashankaram. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunattu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Lalitji, I would request you to begin the session.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Vagishadhyas manasas sarvarthanamupakrameen natva kritakrityasya gajananam sharadam bhojavadana vadanambuje sarvada sarvadasmakam sannidhim kriyat pramananakhanirбhinna mahamohamararaye namaskurmo nrisimhaya swaprakashachidatmane sadashivasamarambham shankaracharya madhyamam अस्मदाचार्य पर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां श्रीमते शंकरार्याय धीमते अद्भुतशक्तये नमोऽस्त्वद्वैत सिद्धान्तस्थापनोपात्तमूर्तये शास्त्राभ्यपारदृश्वानं संगहीनं तपोनिधिं भजे श्रीभारतीतीर्थगुरुं भद्रौघदायकं भजे श्रीभारतीतीर्थकराम्बुजसमुद्भवं विधुचूडार्चनासक्तं विधुशेखरभारतीम् नमस्त्रिभुवनोत्पत्तिस्थानसंहारहेतवे विष्णवे पारसंसारपारोत्तरणसेतवे. With Namaskaram to Sharadamba and the Jagadgurus, I welcome you all again to the second and the conclusion of the two lectures that will be the summation of this topic. So, in the last session, we were discussing, as we said, Brahmalakshana, right? So how do we define Brahman? Specifically, not through the Swarupa Lakshana, which we said is Satchidananda and is not really a Lakshana, but is more so just the nature of Brahman, but rather with respect to the world, right? So that which is the cause of the world, that which in which the world abides, or that due to which the world is regulated or controlled, and that into which the world dissolves, right? So it is called the Tatastha Lakshana, wherein the Brahman is defined relative to the world, right? So it is not a pure definition of Brahman, but it is defined relative to the world. So when doing that, first we talked about the Vedavakya, Yato va imani bhutani jayante, yena jatani jivanti, yat prayanti abhisamvishanti, Taittiriya. So that from which beings originate, that due to which they abide, and that into which they dissolve. And then we talked about whether each one of these was enough to be the Lakshana, or if whether all three of these combined needed to be there. To do this, we looked at several sutras that that Sutrakara Badarayana Maharshi has given us, and then we looked at the Siddhanta, the position of the Tattvakaumadikara. The Tattvakaumadikara, who he said that it is enough if only one of them is a Lakshana. But then we also saw another stance, another Advaitic stance only, that no, because there are two types of Karanatva. There is Nimitta Upadana, and there is Nimitta Karana and Upadana Karana. So Laya Karana by definition has to be Upadana, it has to be raw material, because things have to dissolve only back into their raw material and not into the intelligent cause. And therefore, the Jagat, the raw material, the material cause and the intelligent cause of the world's birth might be different, and the material cause and the intelligent cause of the world's sustenance might also be different. So to avoid such doubts, we need to put all three of them into the same Lakshana to show that Brahman is both the Upadana and the Nimitta Karana of the worlds. That Brahman is both the efficient and the material cause of the cosmos. So in part of that, we have now seen that there is this one thing called Upadana Karana, right, the material cause. And there are several ways we also discussed quickly towards the end that this Upadana Karana morphs into the effect, that the cause becomes the effect, right? And we discussed the Tarkika standpoint, right, the logician standpoint, that several atoms come together to form a new entity. And then we also discussed the Sankhya school's standpoint, wherein one entity undergoes a change to become another entity, as milk undergoes change to become curd. And we also ended with the question that neither one of these can apply to Brahman, because Brahman is Advitiya, it is without second. So there is no chance of many Brahmans uniting together to make a new Jagat. And in the same way, Brahman is Kutastha, it is Avikari, it does not undergo change, which means that there is no chance of Brahman becoming the world, means changing itself to become the world, leaving no Brahman behind. Right? So these are two of the problems that we were faced with. So therefore, what we now need to do is define what kind of material cause Brahman is. What is the nature of the Upadana Karana that we propose? So the Nayayika's standpoint, the Tarkika's standpoint, the logician standpoint, wherein many things come together to form the world, is thrown out in the beginning anyway, right? Because we are Advaitins, because we say Ekameva Advitiyam Brahma, there is no second. There is zero possibility of anything changing, of many things existing before the Jagat at all. There is no chance that the cosmos' beginning lays in multiplicity. There is no chance of that. So therefore, we do not really deal with them too much. Of course, we discuss them as the need comes, and we refute them as well. But our main concern lies with the Sankhya, right? Because his is dangerously close to us, because he only has one entity as well. There is just milk. There is no question of things coming together. That milk becomes the Jagat, right? So then, what becomes the nature of Brahman? So what is the problem that we face now? Because if Brahman changes to become the world, then there should be no Brahman left over at all. The same way that once all the milk becomes curd, there is no milk left if the curd has curded properly, right? So in the same way, now we need to redefine what kind of material cause Brahman is to the world. So towards that end, we say that we give three definitions. So we term this type of material cause as Vivarta. So the Tarkikas is called Arambhavada. The Sankhya's stance is called Parinamavada. So basically the Tarkika is called Arambhavada. Arambha means to be begun, right? So something else is begun by many other things. So the Tarkika stance is Arambhavada. Then the Sankhya stance is called Parinamavada, means change. Parinamate means to change. So when the cause changes into the effect, as milk changes into curd. So that is the Sankhya stance. So the Advaitin stance is called Vivartavada, wherein it is apparent change. Change, we do agree that change takes place, because otherwise multiplicity should not even be beheld, right? So if nothing happened at all, then there should be no chance of us seeing a variegated world. But whether for good or for bad, the world exists. So we have but no choice to deal with it and accept its realities. So we say that instead of an actual true change occurring, we say an apparent change has occurred. Just as the rope undergoes an apparent change into the snake, just as the shell undergoes an apparent change into silver, in the same way, Brahman undergoes an apparent change into the Jagat. So very nicely in the Siddhanta Lekha Sangraha, the text that I have been basing these two talks off of, Appayadikshitendra gives us three qualities, three ways to highlight the difference between the Sankhya's Parinamavada of pure change and the Advaitam's Vivartavada of apparent change. So the first thing he gives is Vastunaha tat samasattākaha anyatha bhava parinamaha tad asamasattākaha anyatha bhava vivartaha. This is the simplest and most easiest to understand. So a change or the effect that has the same level of reality as its cause is parinama. So in Parinamavada, right, in the Sankhya school of thought, the effect has the same level of reality as the cause. Whereas in Advaita, the effect has a lesser degree of reality. Asama means different, but in reality it is lesser. The effect is less real than the cause. In the same way that the snake is less real than the rope. Right? The rope belongs to what we call Vyavahara Satta. Right? The transactional reality, the reality that is unencumbered by anything other than the realization of Brahman. Right? So the world that we transact with unhindered until we get Brahmajnana is called the Vyavaharika Jagat, the transactional reality that we live. Whereas the snake is called Pratibhasika, it is only seeming. Right? Pratibhasate means it seems so. It seems so. It is not even transactionally real. It only looks that way. Right? So the snake has already has a lower level of reality, right? In terms of how real it is. It is definitely, no one in the right mind will say that the snake and the rope are equally valid. Right? The snake is clearly less real than the rope. So this is why this is the easiest way for us to understand the difference between Parinama and Vivarta. Right? So the thing is, in this Vivarta now, there is no danger of Brahman not existing once the world comes into being. Right? Just because we see a snake does not mean that the rope ceases to be. Right? If the second we see a snake, the rope ceases to be. Then by the time we realize it's not a snake, then what should be left there? Right? So because that is not possible, we have to understand that this Vivarta is a type of change in which the cause is unchanged. It is a change in which the cause is unchanged. That is the way of putting it. Right? So it is a change in which the effect is less real than the cause, but the cause does not change. Whereas in Parinamavada, the cause becomes the effect wholeheartedly. It is a true, real change. Right? So this is the first easiest definition that Dikshitendra gives us. And then he gives us another definition. Karana salakshanaha anyatha bhavaha parinamaha, karana vilakshanaha anyatha bhavaha vivartaha. So an effect that is similar in nature to the cause is called parinama. An effect that is different in nature to the cause is called vivarta. Right? This is also very interesting, right? Because, for example, let us take the mud in the pot, right? So when the mud becomes the pot, both of these are muddy, right? So if the mud is red, the pot will be red. If the mud is black, the pot will be black. If the mud is wet, the pot will be wet, right? So the qualities of the cause persist through to the effect completely. Right, generally speaking, right? If milk is a dairy product, if you want to look at it that way, if milk is a dairy product, curd is also a dairy product. Milk is white, curd is white, something like that. Right? So in the state, but when it comes to Vivarta, right, in the Advaitin school, it is Karana Vilakshana. It is, you end up with an effect that is different than the cause, that is non-homogeneous, right? So for example, Brahman is Sat. You end up with a Jagat that is not exactly Sat, right? It is neither Sat nor Asat. It is a very frequent topic in Advaita that you would have heard, right? It is called Anirvachaniya, right? If it is Sat, if it is absolutely true, it should never perish. But if it is absolutely not true, then it should never be experienced in the first place, right? So we assign it this kind of Trishankusthiti, this kind of undiscernible, undecidable limbo between absolute reality and absolute negation, right? So the Jagat is different in that nature from Brahman. In the same way, Brahman is of the nature of Chit. Brahman is Chaitanya, it is consciousness, it is sentient. Whereas the Jagat, generally speaking, the Panchabhutas and all are inert, they're insentient, they're Jada. Right? So in this way, we see that in Vivarta, the Karya is Vilakshana, it is different than the Karya. The Karana is Vilakshana than the Karya. The effect is different in nature than the cause. So now it is very interesting to look at the way these Shastra Granthas put forth things. So Dikshitendra had already given us a definition, right? He said, an effect that is different in reality, in the level of that is less real than the cause is Vivarta. An effect that is equally real to the cause is, that has equal reality as the cause is Parinama. So then this he said this definition is perfectly fine. I like this one. Let's keep this one. Why did Dikshitendra give us another one? remember that this is Siddhartha Lesha Sangraha. Dikshitendra is trying to show us all the gamut of the entire gamut of definitions that could possibly pop up. So there are only 3, don't get worried, but we have done 2 so far. So the reason why the first one was told and then another one was also told is, so to say that something is more real or less real, we need to accept satta traividya, right? So there is this concept in Advaita of threefold nature of reality, which is what we talked about, right? Pratibhasika, right? The apparent realities. Then vyavaharika satta, right? The transactional reality, and of course Brahman is paramarthika satta, the absolute reality. So in order to have this definition wherein causes are either more real, less real, equally real, you have to be accepting of the fact that there are 3 layers of reality. So there is some Advaitin, there is some sub-schools of Advaita which do not accept that there is this threefold nature of consciousness. There's only one layer of reality within which small altercations happen. So for those people, then this definition does not fall because there is no such thing as more real or less real. Right? So to show what the difference between Parinama and Vivarta would look like in such a school's view of thought, Dikshitendra gave us this definition also. And then he gives us one last definition purely to show us that to highlight the difference between Satkaryavada, Asatkaryavada, and Vivartavada. So basically to show us Anirvachaniyatva, right? The quality that I told you about wherein it is in limbo, right? It is neither here nor there. To show us that, he gives us the last definition. Karana bhinnam karyam parinamaha tad abhedena durvachan karyam vivartaha tad vyatirekena durvachan karyam vivartaha tad abhedam vinaiva tad vyatirekena durvachan karyam vivartaha. So basically what he says is, the effect that is not different from the cause is parinama. The effect that while is not the same as the cause cannot be told as separate from the cause is vivarta. So let me say that again. So in parinama is the change in which the effect is the effect in which it is in which the effect is the same as the cause, right? So karana abhinnam karyam, the effect is karana abhinna, non-different to the karya, to the karana, to the cause. Whereas in vivarta, right, tad abhedam vina. So although there is no unity, right? Although not unity, I should say. Although there is no non-difference, okay. So although there is no abheda, you still cannot say that there is bheda. Such a change is called vivarta. Right? I mean, it is a wordy definition, but it is one that is straightforward nonetheless, right? The mud is the pot is mud, right? The milk is curd, the curd is milk. No one has any doubts there. But by the time it comes back to our dear friends, the rope and the snake, right? So is the snake different from the rope? Well, obviously, right? You scream when you see a snake, you start sweating, your heart rate goes up. If you do that when you see a rope, you need to go to the hospital, right? That is not the case, right? So clearly there is a difference between the snake and the rope. But at the same time, there is no snake without the rope. You cannot truly say that the snake is separate from the rope. Right? So a change in which the effect is not non-different from the cause, but at the same time cannot be said to be different from the cause, is called vivarta. Right? So here, the Vyakhya, so this Vyakhya is called Krishnalankara Vyakhya. It is a very beautiful Vyakhya. It is one of the few Vyakhyas wherein the Vyakhyakāra explains the text rather than taking the text to the next level. So generally Vyakhyanas, commentary texts are of 2 types. One type will try to explain the text. It will be a kind of a student-friendly text in that the commentator will make sure that no line in the mula, in the root text is left unexplained, that no word is left unambiguous, that every transition and everything is explained. So that is one type of commentary. Then there are other types of commentaries which are not meant to be, a hand-holding guide throughout the Mula Grantha, throughout the root text, but rather are meant to advance the vichara, are meant to advance the arguments and the back and forths to the next level. Right? So this Krishnalankara Vyakhya belongs to the first type, the type that is beneficial to the readers. So what the Vyakhyakara does here is he gives us the positions of the Sankhya and the Tarkika, and then he also very nicely shows us how the Advaitin reconciles both. Right? So let us also not forget why we're doing this. We're doing this to figure out how Brahman is the cause of the world. So we're saying that Brahman is the cause of the world as the Upadana. Right? And then we said Upadana is of three kinds, Arambha, Parinama, and Vivarta. And of these three, we have chosen Vivarta. So Brahman is the Vivarta Upadana of the world. Right? So to define Brahman as such, we have undertook this discussion. Right? So the first way that he did it was, so what did the Advaitin say? We cannot say that the effect is different from the cause, nor can we say that it is non-different. Right? We cannot say it is the same as the cause, nor can we say that it is different. So first he shows the Sankhya and the Tarkika. So what the Sankhya says is, the Sankhya says that the effect cannot be different from the cause, right? Because in the Sankhya school, the cause is the effect. The effect is the same as the cause, right? It is equal. So the Sankhya will say that you cannot say that, the Sankhya will say that the effect cannot be different from the cause. And meanwhile, the Tarkika will say that because he, remember, is the Arambha, right? So before two atoms form together to form a dual atom, which is called a Dvyanuka, before two Anus come together to form a Dvyanuka, there is no Dvyanuka, and the Dvyanuka is different from an Anu, right? So two Anukas come together to form something different, a Dvyanuka. So for him, the cause is very much different from the effect, right? So the cause cannot be said to be the same. So for him, you cannot say that the Karya and Karana have Abheda. You cannot say that the cause and the effect have Abheda. Whereas for the Sankhya, you cannot say that the cause and effect have Abheda. So what the Vyakyakarya does is, here, he nicely shows us 2 or 3 reasons that each of them present, and then he shows us how Vidyaranya Swami very nicely in Panchadashi reconciles them. Right? So the first argument that the Sankhya brings is, it's one that we talked about earlier, that if the qualities of the effect are found in the cause, right? So the qualities of the effect cannot spring out of nowhere. They have to come from somewhere, right? So for example, the mud is smooth. The same smoothness is seen in the pot. So if these are different, then this cannot happen, right? That is one thing. Then the next thing is, if we see if the cause and the effect are different, right, then we should be able, if the cause and the effect are different, then we should not be able to perceive them at the same time, right? If the cause and the effect are different, we should not be able to see them at the same time. But the case is that when we see a mud pot, we say that this pot is mud, right? We say that this pot is mud. This is only possible if the cause and the effect are the same, right? If the mud is different and the pot is different, then the mud should be elsewhere. When you see the mud, you should not see the pot. When you see the pot, you should not see the mud. But what do we say? We say nimnonatad vyakarabhati ghrita ghataha. So the mud with curves and up and down structures is a pot, right? So in this sentence itself, you are clearly saying that the mud is a pot. So you cannot differentiate the cause and the effect. That is one thing. The second thing is, you will very clearly not just seeing them differently, but the vyavahara, right? So vyavahara means the way that things are discussed. So you will say, I have golden earrings, I have a mud pot, right? Otherwise, I have a silk cloth, right? So when you are saying that, what does it mean? The cloth is silk. So the silk that you wove the cloth from is the cloth. In the same way, the mud that you made the pot from is the pot. In the same way, the gold that you made the earring from is the gold, right? Is the earring, right? So the very fact that you say Swarnam Kundalam is a golden earring, it is a wooden bowl, it is a silk cloth. This itself proves that these two being in the same adhikarana, right? These two being in the same entity must be the same. And then the one more thing that they show is, if it is true that the effect does not exist in the cause, then any effect can be born from anywhere. That is another problem that you will get, right? So if there is no pre-existing pot in the mud, and a non-existing pot pops out of the mud, then yeah, you also get a table out of the mud then, because it is just as the pot is non-existent, but the table also is non-existent. So just as the non-existent pot comes out of the mud, then a non-existent table should also come out of the mud, right? So this is what the Sankhya calls Sarva Sambhava Bhavat. He says everything would have to be born out of everything otherwise. So that is not the case. Only because the effect exists in the cause, it is the case that certain effects are born of certain causes. So that is the other yukti that he shows. If this was not the case, anything would be born from everywhere, right? Fish would be born from birds, birds would be born from fish, deer would be born from lions, lions would be born from deer. There should be no correlation between the cause and the effect, right? So this is the one thing that he shows. And the last thing that he shows is you can only show a relationship to two things that are pre-existing. You can only say this is the father and this is the son if both are pre-existing. So because the son was in the mother's stomach for 9 months and whatnot, you say, okay, so the son came out of the mother, therefore she is the progenitor and the son is born, right? She is the janani and the son is the jata, right? You're using this. So the fact that there is a sambandha, there is a relation. Relations only exist for two things at the same time, right? Otherwise, what will be the problem? You will have a relation for only one thing, right? Otherwise, you will have the problem that you will have to call him a father before he even has a son, right? You can only call someone a father if there is a progenitor and a child. If there is a progenitor and progeny, right? Only when both of these exist can you say that there is a sambandha, there is a correlation. If there is only one man, a single man that is unmarried, and you go and call him a father, he will be very angry with you because there is no other entity that is needed to give a sambandha there, to give a relation. So the very fact that you're saying the words cause and effect, that you're giving a causal relationship there, means that both sides of this causal relationship must be pre-existing. So these are the arguments that the Sankhya puts forth to say that the effect must be latent in the cause and not different from the cause. So once he hears it, he'll say, yeah, Sankhya is probably right. He's dead on, sure on. And then meanwhile, happily the Tarkika comes and says, there is a problem. Because if you say that the cause and the effect are not different, there is a problem. Tasyaiva tatkaranatvam tatkaryatvam cha nasambhavati. One thing cannot be a cause, its own cause and its own effect at the same time. Right? If you say that the mud and the pot are the same thing, and you say that the mud is the cause and the pot is the effect, that whole lump sum cannot be its own cause and its own effect at the same time. Right? You cannot call on some person and say you are your own father and you are your own son. That does not work. So because the same entity cannot be its own cause and its own effect, you have to accept that the cause and effect are two separate entities. That is one thing. The other thing is, there is one thing called arthakriya abheda abhava. You run the danger of abheda kriya abhava. Arthakriya abheda abhava. That is one thing you run. So there is this thing called arthakriya bheda. The meaning of the word and the task that it fulfills are different. Right? The tasks that a pot does are different from mud. For example, a pot can be used to fetch water. Mud, just a lump of mud, cannot be used to fetch water. In the same way, a mud can be used to make a pot. You cannot use a pot to make a pot. Right? So there are differences in the roles that these two entities play. The cause does different things, and the effect does different things. Right? So the same thing with a cloth. You can wear the cloth as a garment. Right? You cannot wear threads as a garment, for example. In the same way, gold, right? You can melt gold, right? You probably should not melt ornaments that you're wearing, right? So in this way, there are differences that the cause as an object has, and the effect as an object has. They perform different functions, and they also have different names, right? The word pot means something different than the word mud. The word thread means something different than the word cloth. So this very fact is enough to show that these two have to be two different things. Right? If a pot was mud, then both of these things should be able to fetch water from the river. Both of these things should be able to generate pots, but that is clearly not the case. That is another thing that he says. The one more thing that he says is, so you are saying that there is this janya janaka bhava, right? There is a progenitor and progeny, right? Something that is a cause and something that is caused an effect. So if the cause is already, if the effect is pre-existing in the cause, what is the need for birth at all? Right. So if the pot exists in the mud, why does the potter have to lift a finger? Why does the potter have to do anything? Right. If the cloth exists in the threads, why does the weaver have to do anything? Right? The cloth is already there. The pot is already there. Why does the poor potter have to sit down and spend the entire day spinning the wheel, getting his hands dirty, pouring more water, lifting the thing, lowering the thing, pushing it there, poking it here, painting it? Why does he have to do all that? If the pot already exists, you might as well let it be. Right? So there is a vayarthya, means the entire process of giving birth to something will become futile if the effect already exists in the cause. So this is one more thing. And the last reason that the Tarkika gives in this particular part of the text is that, so if you say that just as the pot is real, just as the mud is real, the pot is also real, then you are pointing to the pratiti. You are pointing, so what did the Sankhya say? When the pot is there, you are saying, see, mud, this is a mud pot. But the Tarkika is pointing to the fact that you are saying that once the pot has come, but before the pot is made, when there is only a lump of mud there, are you looking at the lump of mud and saying this is a pot? When you have just a bunch of strands of yarn or wool or something or silk laying there, are you looking at that and saying, okay, this is a cloth? Clearly not, right? So the very fact that the pot is not available for perception the same way the mud is. The very fact that the effect is not available the way the cause is prior to the effect's birth is clear evidence that the effect and the cause cannot be the same. Right? So in this way, both the Tarkika and the Nayayika have admittedly very strong cases. So with all of these reasons, the Tarkika will say that therefore, because of all of these reasons, the cause and the effect cannot be the same. They must be different. The effect cannot be the same as the cause. And then for the reasons that he told, the Sankhya will come and say that, I am sorry, sir, however much you may differ with me, I have shown you very clearly that for all the reasons I have told, you have to accept that it is the same. It does not work if these are different. The cause and the effect have to be the same. So then the Vedanti comes along, and specifically here the Vyakhyakarya took Sri Vidyaranya Swami, so the great Acharya, the 14th Acharya of the Sringeri Pitha, the cause of the founding of the mighty Vijayanagara Empire, the author of illustrious works like Jivan Mukti Viveka, Dripkrishi Viveka, especially the crown jewel of perhaps of his works Panchadashi, and in his the Madhurya Digvijaya, Chaturveda Bhashya, and the establisher of several Upamathas throughout Karnataka, Andhra, and various other states. This Jagadguru, this Vidyaranya Acharya, Shri Vidyaranya Acharya, in Panchadashi gives a very nice shloka summarizing the difficulties found in both sides. Saghato na mrudo bhinnaha vikar viyoge satyanikshana napya bhinnaha pura pindadashaya manavekshana. Right? So he says, Saghato na mrudo bhinnaha. The ghata is not different from the mrit. The pot is not different from the mud. Why? Viyoge satyanikshana. You do not find them differently. You will find no pot without mud. Right? So that is one thing. So notice he didn't say that the mud is not different from the pot. He said the pot is not different from the mud. Because remember, the Sankhya says that the effect is not different from the cause. It does not say the cause is not different from the effect. Right? This is a very minute thing to grasp. Right? Because you will find mud without a pot in many places, but you will never find a pot without mud. So it is worth noting that here it is the effect that cannot be said to be different from the cause in the Sankhya's side. Right? So Vidyaranya Swami says, Sadhataha, that pot, namrado bhinnaha, is not different from the mud. Why? Viyoge sati anikshanat, because you do not see them separately. You do not see a pot without mud. But in the same way, napya bhinnaha, in the same way, the pot is not the same as the mud. Why? Pinda dashaya manavekshanat. Because when the mud is still a pinda, right, when it is still a lump of mud, you do not see the pot there. So this becomes the problem. So what we how the Advaitin solves this issue is by undergoing the Anirvachaniya Khyati, one, by accepting that, one. Number two, very easily by taking up Satta Traividya. So we say that the Karana exists in the Karya Utpatti, Karya Kala, and Karya Nashakala. Right? So the Karana, the cause exists during the birth of the effect, during the time that the effect exists, and even after the effect perishes. Just as mud exists when the pot is born, while the pot exists, and even after the pot is broken. Right? So that is one thing. Therefore, karyapekshaya karanam satyam, which is why in Vivarta, if you remember, we said karyapekshaya, with regards to the karya, with regards to the effect, karyam satyam, karanam satyam. The cause is more real. Right? That is one thing. The other thing is, we have, of course, Vaidika Pramanams. Right? So in Veda, we see that Badha happens to everything except Brahman, basically illustrating this point. Right? So once jnana happens, then this entire world gets sublated. That is the word. It is called being sublated. Badha, sublation. So what is sublation? What is Badha? Whatever happens to the snake after you realize it is not a snake, that is Badha. So the understanding of the snake merging into the being of the rope. Right? The being of the snake merging into the being of the rope and ceasing to be specifically the existence of the snake. Does that make sense? So when the snake loses its own existence, stops being perceived as a snake and merges back into its foundational reality of the rope, that is called Badha. And that is what happens with Brahman and the Jagat. So that is one reason. And then very nicely in the end, Vidyaranya Swami gives one drishtanta. So one example that Veda itself gives. Right? So he says, Evam mayamayattvena vikarasya anritatmatam vikaradhara mridvastu satyatvanjabravit shruti. So this is a twofold process. Right? So he says that Shruti has said something. What has Veda said? Mayamayattvena vikarasya anritatmatam. That the vikara, right? The effect is anrita. Anrita means not true. Right? Because it is mayamaya, because it is born of illusion. It is born of illusion. Because it is born of illusion, the effect is anrita. Notice it is not false. It is merely not true. And in the same way, vikaradhara mridvastu satyatvam. The mud that is the basis of the vikara, of the change. Asya satyatvam. The Shruti has said that this is satya. So what has Shruti said? What has Veda said? Veda has said that the change is not true, and that the adhara of the vikara, right, the foundation of this change is true. So where has Upanishad said this? So you have the very famous line in Chandogya, Vacharambhanam vikaro namadheyam vrittiketyeva satyam is the line. Vacharambhanam vikaro namadheyam vrittiketyeva satyam. So vikara, the pot, is vacharambhanam. Vacha arabhyate iti vacharambhanam. It exists because of speech. What does this mean? Because you called it a pot, because you gave it the name pot, you are saying it is a pot and it is not mud. If you do not give it the name pot, it is just mud. Right? So which is why Veda very nicely gives the name. It terms all effects as vacharambhanam. They are termed, so therefore they are effects. Means no actual where does the change actually happen? The change happens in the terminology that we assign. See, just whether the mud is round or hollow or long or small or fits in your hand or big is immaterial. Right? It is still mud at the end of the day. But where does this change happen? We say it is a pot, it is a bowl, it is a spoon, it is a toy. Where does all this come from? It is a word. It is a word. It is some arbitrary name that we assign its form, which is why Veda calls it vacharambhanam. Remember this word. Vacha arabhyate iti vacharambhanam. But vrittiketyeva satyam. Vrittika iti eva satyam. Vrittika alone is the actual truth. Right? Whether you make it a pot or a toy or a spoon or a bowl or a plate, whatever you make it, you can be dead sure that it will be mud. right? So this is the summation of the Upadanata of Brahman that we are looking at. The change that Brahman undergoes is anrata, right? It is apparent, seeming, it is not real. And just as when we see the pot, right? So there are some things that were not there perhaps in the mud before. For example, the round shape, a mouth, and open, a filling inside. So these things are there that were not there in the mud before. Fine. But it is our choice to give that the name pot and treat it as different from the mud. In the same way, sure, the Jagat may be slightly different from the Nirguna, Nishkriya, Nirakara Brahman. But at the end of the day, it is still terminology. It is still a linguistic change, not just a linguistic change. It is a problem of perception. We are perceiving it as different, and therefore we see that it is different. That is why it is jnana that is required in Advaita, right? It is proper perception. It is your perception that needs to be changed, and not anything else, right? It is not karma. It is not going to some other loka. It is not the grace of a deity. It is not the blessings of some entity. But it has to be knowledge, because only through knowledge can perception be correct. Right? So that is the nature of the upadana. That is the type of upadana that is what vivarta means. Right? So I hope you are all pretty clear on vivarta. An apparent change that is not completely true. Okay. So now, after all of this, what have we come to? So Brahman, the Brahmalakshana is Jagat Janma Sthiti Laya Karanatve Laya Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karanam. And even in the Upadana Karanam, it is Vivatta Upadana Karanam. Okay, so this is the definition that we have so far. Note this is another beauty of the text. Right? So we started off with a very simple definition, the cause of the words. And now we slowly keep adding on. So then we said that it is Nimitta and Upadana. Then we had to specify which Upadana. So slowly you go building on the Lakshana until it becomes more and more specific. So until now, this is one thing. This train of thought is kind of finished here. So now the next question we get is, so Brahman is Chaitanya, right? So depending on your school, you will either have Chit Traividya or Chit Chaturvidya. So consciousness is usually split into threefold consciousness or fourfold consciousness instead of its manifestation. So one is Jiva, Isho, Vishuddha Chita. So Jiva, Ishvara, and Shuddha Chaitanya, right? Nirguna Chaitanya. So these are three forms of the same Chaitanya. In other schools, for example, in the Chitradipa part of Vidyaranya Swami's Panchadashi, you will have Chaturvidya. So you will have Jiva, Isha, Kutastha, Shuddha Chaitanya. So you will also add the Kutastha. So depending on this, now let us just take these three for now. So you have Brahman, Jiva, and Ishvara. Right? So of these three, which form of Brahman is it that is the cause of these words? Right? Which one of these is it that is the upadana of these words? Which one of these forms of Brahman is it that is the material cause of this word? Right? So first, we will look at the Sankshepa Sharirika Acharya. So there is one text called Sankshepa Sharirika. It discusses obviously the Brahmasutras. It is a very revered text. It is a very revered text, and I will talk about the nature of the contradiction of this before I wrap up. Because at no point does Advaita ever say that one Acharya is wrong and the other Acharya is right. Right? This is a presentation of many views in Advaita. There will, as will be custom when there is multiplicity, there are definitely stronger views and weaker views. That will be the case. There will be views that are more prevalent and views that are less prevalent. There will be views that are easier to defend and views that are harder to defend. But nowhere does Advaita or the Vyakyakaras or anyone else since then, for that matter, say that any of these acharyas are wrong, because all of these acharyas are very revered and respected. They're not just great panditas, but they're great sadhakas, yogis, and jnanis in their own right. Right? So, but even though these people, you're saying these people are all realized and they're all such erudite scholars, why then is there contradiction? We will finish with that. I will finish with, actually Advaita starts with that shloka. We will finish with that just because it will wrap things up very nice. So first, the Sankshepa Sharirika Acharya says it is Shuddha Chaitanya. So the Nirguna Nishkriya, Nirakara Brahman, the untouched, unadulterated, pure consciousness is the cause of the words. Why? So this is purely Shruti, it's a Shruti-based argument, it's a Vedic argument. Because after the Yatovayamani Bhutani Jayante Yarjatani Jivanti Yatprayanti Abhisamvishanti, What did Veda say? Tad vijijñāsasva, tad Brahma. Shruti said, know that Brahman. So if you remember in the first session, we talked about two types of Brahman. One Brahman is meant to be known, one Brahman is meant to be meditated upon, thought about, contemplated on. Right? It is the contemplated Brahman that is the Saguna Brahman, which we call Ishvara. It is the Nirguna Brahman that is the Brahman that is to be known. The Satchidananda Brahman that is formless, nameless, colorless, tasteless, odorless, all that is to be known. And what did Veda say here? Tad vijijñāsasva. You should seek to know that. So because Veda said that this is the Brahman that you wish to know, therefore it means that the Brahman that Veda has talked about so far as the cause of these beings, as the cause of their sustenance, as the foundation of their dissolution, must be the Jnaya Brahma, the Brahman to be known, which is Nirguna Nishkriya Shuddha Chaitanya. So this is the Sankshepa Shariraka stance. So then the Vivaranacharya comes. Now, the Vivaranacharya position is almost always a very strong stance. It's a very strong stance because Vivaranacharya is rock solid and incredibly esteemed by all Advaitic schools. You will find very few people, and everyone will fall into either Vivarana or Vachaspati Mishra school, Bhamati. But Vivarana is, of course, very, very esteemed. So his arguments, Vivaranacharya's arguments, are always rock solid and they will be very clear. They make sense. So, of course, we ourselves will get the question, if Brahman has no qualities and nothing, then what is he making this out of? Right? So you need to have some variegation within you to create something. Right? You do not have to have change per se, but at least some variety needs to be there, right? So then there needs to be something there, which is why the Vivaranacharya says that Maya Shabalam Brahma. So what does this word Shabala mean? Shabala means variegated. So it is kind of used in color, right? So if something is a dappled color, right, that is called Shabala. Like if light passes through a magnifying glass or something, and it falls on the wall, and the wall is draped in colors, right? That is called Shabala. Means those colors are not actually there, but those colors are imposed. So in the same way, the Brahman that is the cause of these worlds is Maya Shabala Chaitanya, which is Ishvara. Maya Shabala Ishvara. So, and of course, the Vivaranacharya also shows a Veda Vakya. So there is a very famous Veda Vakya. Yas sarvajñas sarvavit yasya jnanamayan tapaha tasmadetad brahma nama rupa mannancha jayate. So there is a Brahman, right? There is one entity that is sarvajña and sarvavit, right? So both of these words actually both mean all knowing. Jna and vit both are dhatus. Jna means to know, vit means to know. Right? Both of these dhatus mean to know. So sarvajña and sarvavit both mean omniscient, all knowing. So why did Veda use this twice? One means pratyeka jnana, the other means samoha jnana. So what does this mean? If there are 10 people in a room, knowing that there are 10 people in a room is sarvajña. Knowing each of those 10 people, their names, where they come from, why they came, what they like, what they don't like, knowing each of them individually is sarvavit. So to show that Ishvara not only knows the cosmos in its whole, he knows everything in minutiae. Veda has used two words, sarvajña and sarvavit. Now and then the rest of the mantra says, tasmat, from that Chaitanya, from that Ishvara, Brahma. Brahma here does not mean Brahman. Brahma here means Veda. Brahma, Nama, names, Rupam, forms, Annam, Prithvi Adi Bhuta. So Annam means Prithvi, and by Prithvi all the other Bhutas are taken. So all of these are born. Right? So what are we saying here? That Brahman which is Sarvajña, from that Brahman all these beings were born. From that Brahman the Vedas, the Bhutas, names, forms, all of this was born. So now being Sarvajña, Sarvavit, all of these are qualities only when Brahman has Maya with him. Right? Shuddha Chaitanya has no need to be Sarvajña. There is nothing else to know. There is only Sarupa Jnana. So Sarvajñatva, right? Omniscience only happens when Brahman is Ishvara and has Maya by his side. So because this Vedavakya said that the Ishvara, that is Sarvajña, is the cause for these worlds, therefore we will have to say that it is not Shuddha Chaitanya that is the cause of the world, but rather it is Maya Shabala Chaitanya. It is Maya Shabalam Ishvara Chaitanya. It is Ishvara's Chaitanya variegated by Maya that is the cause of this world. And of course, he shows two very nice sutras, Brahmasutras here, to back up his point. There is this one very nice sutra called Antastad Dharma Upadeshat. It is a very nice sutra. It is very simple. A simple sutra, but also one that is good to know. It illustrates the point. So Antaha, within Tad Dharma Upadeshat, because its qualities have been told. So again, as we said, we will not understand this unless we look at which Vedavakya, which Vedic passage that this is referring to. So in Chandogya, there is one upasana called Antaraditya upasana. So you are told to meditate upon this being in the orb of the sun. Ya Eshontaraditye Hiranyaya Purusho Drishyate Hiranya Shmashruhu Hiranya Keshaha Apranakhat Sarva Eva Suvarnaha. This is the thing. So that being that is seen within the orb of the sun, he has, he has golden facial hair, Hiranya Shmashruhu, golden mustache and golden beard. Hiranya Keshaha, his hair is also golden. Apranakhat Sarva Eva Suvarnaha. Pranakha means the tips of his nails. So all the way up to the tips of his nails, he is golden. So here golden means Tairasa, he is effulgent, he is radiant. That is what Suvarna here means. So, and then what does Veda go on to say? Tasya Rikcha Samacha Geshnau. So to that Purusha, Rik and Sama are both Geshnas. Geshnas means Rangopajivi. Rangopajivi means a minstrel, right? Someone that spends their living, that gets their living from stage performances, right? So in the olden days, you used to have bards and minstrels that would sing songs and whatnot, right? So we are here. Veda is saying that there is one being within the sun that is golden all the way up to the tips of his nails, and the Rik and Sama are both singing his praise. They are both his minstrels almost. They both sing his glory. And then Veda says, Ya Eshaha Antarakshini Purusho Drishyate. And then he says, there is another person within the eye, within the pupil of the eye. He also has the same qualities. He is also golden up to the tips of his toes and all that. But then there is one more thing. Tadhya ime veenayam gayanti. Etam te gayanti. That is the next line that they say. Before that, there is another passage. Ya Eshantarakshini Purusho Drishyate Saivarit Tat Sama Tad Uktham Tad Yajuhu Tad Brahma. So it not only says that there is one being within the pupil of the eye, but it also says that that being is Sama, that being is Rik, that being is Uktha. Uktha is another type of Sama mantra. That being is Brahma, that being is Veda itself. And then it says, Tadya ime veenayam gayanti, etam te gayanti. So it says, those people that sing of kings and all playing the veena in court, they actually sing of him only. This is a very beautiful statement. So Veda is saying that even so in the past, right? So kings used to have people next to them to praise them, sing songs of their glory and whatnot. So those people would be singing songs, playing the veena, singing about the king. But what Veda is saying is they may think they are praising the king, but they are actually praising Paramatma. They are actually praising that person within the eye of the individual. In the same way, there is one person within the sun, right, sitting within the sun, and he is golden all the way up to the tips of his nails, and the Rik and Sama are praising him. So now the question comes, is this person a Devata or is this person Ishvara? So then the answer comes, this person is Ishvara only. Why? Tad Dharma Upadesha. Because the qualities of Ishvara are given. What are the qualities of Ishvara? Now it's said, right? So Tad Sama, Tad Yajuhu, Tad Brahma. So because it said that this entity is Rik, is Yajus, is Sama, which means that this is the Karana, right? It is the Upadana Karana. The same way that the mud is the pot, in the same way this being, this Purusha that we have been talking about is Sama, is Rik, is Veda, which means that this being is the material from which Veda has been created. And in the same way, what did it say? Tadya ime veenayam gayanti, edetam gayanti. So the person that these people praise with veenas and all, they are actually praising this Purusha, which means that there is one entity that is that has permeated every being in this cosmos in such a way that even when the king is being praised, because he has permeated the king, he ends up being praised. Does that make sense? So because he has permeated the king, even if the court minstrels and singers praise the king, they end up praising the Purusha that is within the king. Right? So there is this one Ishvara that is the Upadana of the king and all the Laukika Purusha. So not just the king, all beings in this world are permeated by this Purusha. And in the same way, all the Vedas are permeated by this Purusha and all that. So what this permeation means is Upadana Karana. Right? Because mud permeates the pot, threads permeate the cloth. So by saying that Ishvara permeates all of these beings, we are saying that Ishvara is the Upadana Karana of all of these. And because we have, and now, remember, so now we have shown that it is Ishvara. Now what are we trying to prove by citing this sutra? We are trying to show that it is Ishvara that is the cause of the world and not Brahman. Right? So therefore, we end up now saying that, see, we are being given a name and a form to be meditated upon. Right? We are saying, look, there is a Purusha within the sun. He is golden in color. You know, his hair is gold. His nails are gold. All the way up to the nails, everything is gold. There is another Purusha within the eye. He is gold also. Up to the tips of his nails, everything is gold. So because we are giving him attributes at this point, and because that same entity is being given as the material cause for the entire cosmos, it follows that the entity that has taken upon a name and form due to Maya has to be the cause for the entire cosmos, and that cause has to be Ishvara because Shuddha Chaitanya is not of that nature. So that is why Dikshitendra has cited this sutra. So because within the sun, we are given a Saguna Ishvara that then is described as the material cause of the entire cosmos, it follows that it is not Shuddha Chaitanya that is the cause of the cosmos, but it has to be Ishvara. So that is one thing. The other thing is, so that is the Vivaranacharya point of view. So then he says there is one more thing that we need to answer. So there is still the point that the last person raised, right? He said, well then Veda said that Vijñāsa. So Veda said that this Brahman is to be known, right? This is not the Brahman to be meditated upon. This is not the Ishvara to do upasana of. This is the Brahman to know and realize. So then what do you say? So then Vivaranacharya gives us this Nyaya called Shakha Chandramasa Nyaya. So just as when the moon, right, is somewhere in the sky, what do you do to point out the moon to a kid? You say, look at the tip of that branch. The moon is on the tip of that branch. So obviously the moon is, orbiting the earth some thousands of miles away. But he is nowhere close to the branch. If the moon was close to the branch, we would not be close to the branch. But at all the same, we say that the moon is close to the branch to show the moon to the child. In the same way, we use this Ishvara to show the Brahman that is to be known. So this is called the Shakha Chandramasa Nyaya. So yes, Tad Vijñāsas are true because you look at this to know that. So look at the Saguna Ishvara only. Look at the Maya Shabala Chaitanya that is the cause of this world. But still the Lakshya, the goal to be realized is still the Jnaya Brahman. So this is the way that the Vivaranacharya puts forth that it is not Shuddha Chaitanya, it is not pure consciousness that is the cause of this world, but it is the Ishvara Chaitanya, that is Maya Shabala, that is the cause of this world. And then there are many more pakshas based on whether Maya and Avidya are different, whether Maya and Avidya are not different. There are many more pakshas that Dikshitendra shows, but in the interest of time, we will look at the last, one of the last pakshas, where they say that it is actually neither Brahman, the pure Brahman, nor Ishvara, but it is instead the Jiva. So this is quite bamboozling for us. Because in our experience, the Jiva is, you give a kid a math problem and he's unable to do it properly. How is he supposed to have created this entire cosmos flawlessly? Right? How is the individual who is very obviously imperfect, by the very fact that he took a birth and has an antahkarana, because he has a mind, he has to be imperfect. How on earth, being limited in power, how on earth is he supposed to be the cause of all of this? So there is this vada called Drishti Srishti Vada, wherein everything is mental. So this Drishti Srishti Vada goes, Yasmat Drishtam, Tasmat Srishtam. The second you saw something, that was the second that you created. So if I'm looking at my laptop right now, The Jiva has, through his power of, the Jiva's avidya, the same way how Brahman has the power of Maya, how Ishvara has the power of Maya, the Jiva has avidya attached to him. So the Jiva, through the force of his avidya, has projected the laptop in front of him and is now looking at the laptop. And the second I turn away, the projection disappears. And when I turn back, I reproject the laptop. So basically, the universe is always in flux, and the Jiva creates the world around it. So, as I said, this is one of the pakshas that is a bit harder to substantiate, but it is philosophically a very potent thing, because at the end of the day, it is very true that the crux of this universe lies in the depth of the mind. The multiplicity in this universe, the birth of this universe lies engendered within the individual's mind. So, it sounds very funny, right? You look here, it is there, you look away, it is not, you look back, it is there. It is a bit funny when we think about it. But philosophically, for a very high sadhaka, that is quite frankly the way things are. Right? It is a reality. It is a simple question, right? It is a question asked to this day in philosophy classes. So they will put a chair in front of you. They will say, prove the chair is there. You will say, I see it. They will blindfold you. They say, prove the chair is there. What will you do? Right? The chair's existence is entirely dependent on your perception. Right? You can say, I remember that there is a chair there, but you don't know that for sure. You can say, someone told me that there is a chair there, but still you don't know that for sure. They could be lying. You don't even know that person is trustworthy. So basically, without your interference, without the Jiva having some conscious interference in one thing or the other, this world is not available at all in the most high of senses, which is why that paksha is there. The Jiva is also the cause of the world. In the soul is actually solely the cause of the world in this school of thought. Then, actually, very interestingly, along comes another person, and he comes along and says, actually, it is not Brahman at all, but it is actually Maya that is the cause of the world. At which point everyone loses their minds, because we have spent so much time painstakingly proving that it has to be Brahman. But then this one person comes by and says it is Maya. Why do you say it is Maya? He points to a Shruti again. Mayantu prakritim vidya, mayinam tu maheshwaram. This is from Shweta Shvatara Upanishad. So what does this mean? No Maya to be Prakriti, and no the Mayi, the person that has Maya under his control, to be Maheshwara. So what does Prakriti mean? Prakriti means the cause, Vikriti is the effect. Mud is the Prakriti, the pot is the Vikriti. So because Maya is being termed as the Prakriti and the Jagat is being termed as the Vikriti, Maya is the cause of the Jagat. So then we say, hold on, there is a problem here. You do not only see the results of Maya in the world, right? It is not just Jadatva and the three gunas that are seen in the world. It is not just insentience and gunas that are seen in the world, sattva, rajas, tamo gunas that are seen in the world. You also see consciousness, right? You also see existence. So therefore, what the last paksha we will talk about says is that the Padartha Tattva Nirnayakara, Padartha Tattva Nirnayakara, this is another Granthakarta. So he says, Maya, Brahma Maya Chet Ubhaya Upada. He says, Brahman and Maya both are the Upada, because elements of both are flawed, right? Because you have this split perception in everything. Sanghataha Jado Ghata, right? You say that the pot exists, but the pot is also insentient. Right? So the aspect of existence comes from Brahman, comes because Brahman is the root cause, is the material cause. The insentience, so that the existence and Vedyatva, right? Bhati, the fact that it shines, it is available, it comes from Brahman. Because Brahman is its cause, its material cause. The fact that it is inert, insentient, comes from the fact that Maya is its cause. So this is yet another paksha of the Padartha Tattva Nirnayakara. So in this way, there are so many ways that our Purvacharyas, our previous Acharyas, have gone about trying to define Brahman in relation to the world, relation specifically as the world's cause. But generally, if we want to walk away with something that is very commonly taken out of all of these pakshas, right? So out of all of these stances that we have heard, the one that is most commonly taken away is, so yeah, Janma Sthiti Laya Karanatva all combined is one Lakshana. Brahman is the Nimitta and Upadana of the world. Within the Upadana, Brahman is the Nimitta Upadana, and it is Ishvara with Maya, the Maya Shabala Ishvara, the Vivaranacharya's stance that we talked about, that is the cause of the world. So Brahman empowered by Maya, the Brahma Chaitanya empowered by Maya, that is the cause of this world. So then, as I told you, we will get one more question. So we will wrap up with the answer to that. So everyone believes in Advaita, right? No one has any doubt. All these Acharyas agree on one thing, that there is only one truth. Ekameva Advitiyam Brahma. They agree on that. Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. Jiva and Brahman are one in nature. Everyone agrees on that. Jagat is Mithya. Everyone agrees on that. Right? Maya is Brahman's Shakti. Everyone agrees on that. Right? So everyone agrees on the foundational principles of Advaita. The difference lies in Upapadana. Upapadana is the explanation, the way that you put forth a theory, the way that you put forth an explanation. So that is where these Acharyas differ. Which is why, starting the Siddhantalesha Sangraha, Appaya Dikshitendra writes 2 shlokas. So one, he gives a beautiful simile, and in the second one, he gives the reason why this is the case. So in the first one, he says, Adhigata Bhida Purvacharya Nupetya Sahasradha Saridiva Mahi Bhedan Samprapya Shauripadodgata Jayati Bhagavatpada Shriman Mukhambujanirgata Janana Harani Sukti Brahmadvayika Parayana. He says, no, Bhagavatpada Shriman Mukhambujanirgata Sukti Jayati. The words of Adi Shankara Bhagavatpada are ever victorious. They excel, they shine. They are the most illustrious. And he then compares them to one thing. He says that they have flowed through Acharyas and split into several paths. And he gives a beautiful simile wherein he says that just as Ganga flowed from Vishnu's feet and split into 100 different paths, in the same way, the Advaita that flowed from Bhagavatpada's mouth attained various Acharyas and split into various paths based on the way that the Acharyas explained them. And even there is a Shabda Chamatkara, poetic Chamatkara, wherein this Advaita Ganga came from Bhagavatpada. Right? Where did Ganga come from? Ganga also came from Bhagavatpada. Right? The Pada of Bhagavan, the feet of Lord Vishnu. Right? Shauri Padodgata. That is one thing. The other commonality that Ganga and Bhagavatpada's Advaita shared are that they are both Janana Harani. They both remove the cycle of birth and death. Right? Obviously, Ganga is a Punya Kshetra, so we generally say that Ganga gives moksha. See, again, Advaitins won't accept that. It just means that they will give you punyas or sattvasanas that are conducive to getting jnana. But obviously, Bhagavatpada's Advaita Siddhanta also, because it teaches you jnana, will give you moksha. And the other beautiful thing is, just because Bhagavatpada's Siddhanta split out across various Acharyas does not mean that any one of those paths is any less valid. The same way that although Ganga splits into several tributaries, no tributary is any less holy than the other. Right? We do not say that Ganga loses its potency or its purity just because this pravaha, this stream is different from that stream, this tributary is different from that tributary. Ganga does not change, right? Its purity does not change, its magnitude does not change, its greatness does not change. In the same way, although Bhagavatpada's Advaita Siddhanta may have flowed across the mouths or out of the mouths, through the mouths of various Advaita Acharyas, it still is not any less valid because they all share a common origin. For all the tributaries of Ganga, Vishnu's feet remain the singular source. And for all the paths of Advaita that the Acharyas have explained throughout history, the source for all of them remains the Upanishads, the Brahmasutras of Badarayana Maharshi, and Bhagavatpada's Bhashya for those sutras. And then we say, okay, fine, it is Brahmadvayika Parayana. All of these people are agreeing in Advaita. So then you are fine in saying that, okay, all of their matas are valid, but why is there difference in the first place? Right? Why can't they all just agree in the same thing and protect our brains from being fried? Why do they have to debate on so many different things? So then he says, Prachinair Vyavahara Siddha Vishayeshu Atmaikya Siddhau Param Sannahyadbhir Anadarat Saranayo Nanavidha Darshita. He says, Prachinair Atmaikya Siddhau Param Sannahyadbhir Vyavahara Siddha Vishayeshu Anadarat Nanavidha Saranaya Darshita. He says, our Prachinas, our Purvacharyas, see, these are all Jnanis. Our focus is on teaching the highest truth. right? The absolute truth, that Brahman is the highest, that Brahman is the ultimate reality, that the Jiva is Brahman, that the Jagat is Mithya. So when these are the absolute truths that you are talking about, all the differences that we have are on the Vyavaharika level, right? The differences that they have are within the Jagat that they themselves deem Mithya. Right. So the thing is, because within the Mithya Jagat, as long as you can explain your position with logic, it doesn't really matter because it is Mithya anyway. The goal is to get to the Paramarthika state. So because our Acharyas were all focusing on teaching us the Paramarthika state, the absolute highest truth, they took upon various means to get there. It does not mean that they disagree. It does not mean that they're in conflict with each other. It just means that because they all had their sights on a higher goal, they all had their sights on teaching us about the higher goal, they merely took various routes to get us there based on what different sadhakas and different seekers would have wanted. So this is a testament, once more, to the sheer compassion that these acharyas have shown us. Because there is no need for them to go through and write all of these texts, say yes, say no, argue there, back and forth, put this logic, take out that logic, say no, yes, then bring someone else into the fray, they get insulted, they have to insult someone else, all of this. Why did they go through the trouble of all of that? Right? Why did Bhagavad have to write everything that he did? See, he lived for 32 years. He had no familial bonds. He walked through India 3 times from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. Right? He did not need anything. He is realized. So why did he take all the effort to finish writing all of the Prasthanatrayi Bhashyas by the age of he was 16? See, yeah, he's an Acharya Purusha, obviously Shivavatara, all that, it is easy for him. But it still takes effort, right? He had to walk to Badari, he had to still study under a guru and all that. What is the reason for all that effort? And then, okay, he could have said, okay, I wrote the books, I am done. Here, you guys figure it out. But again, he went up and down the country, not just debating Tattva and establishing Advaita, but doing samskarana, refining and changing society for the better. He changed the ways that we worship. He changed the ways that we view devatas. He changed the way that temples are viewed. He changed so many things for what? Out of mercy towards us. Right? So the very fact that we have such variety even within Advaita itself speaks volumes to the pure grace that Acharyas have towards us. So we should be ever more grateful to our Acharyas, the utmost grateful to our Acharyas, and that gratitude, of course, always takes 2 forms in Sampradaya. Actual, humility, as in going to the Guru, doing service, doing Guru Seva, prostrating, all of that must be done. But that is not enough. You also need to learn what the Guru is saying. You need to teach the Siddhanta that the Guru professes. You need to study and learn that which it is that the Guru wants you to learn. So by doing Guru Shushrusha, by doing Guru Seva, and also by studying and learning and understanding the Tattva that the Guru exists to profess. Because see, the Guru is not a, get lucky, go home, wish giving tree. Right? Yes, the Guru is very much the Kalpavraksha, Kamadhenu, and protector of Shishyas and all that. But the Guru exists to give us knowledge. Right? So we need to make sure that we are also doing justice to that aspect of the Guru as well. Right? So it needs to take both forms, not just serving the Guru, not just praising the Guru, not just doing Guru Vandana and everything every day, but we also need to make sure that we are reading something of Bhagavad Pada every day. We are reading some Prakarana Grantha, some Shlokas, at the very least some Stotra every day. So, it may not have to be such a heavy Shastra Grantha as the one that we took up today. This is just for the sake of training our minds and showing variety and keeping us interested and giving us food for thought, food for contemplation. But something simple, a little bit, day by day, is something that we definitely must do. This is what Shastra calls Rishi Runa. There is a debt that we owe our Rishis, that we owe our Parampara, for all the work that they did to give us this path to moksha. So let us avail ourselves of that. Let us make sure that we at least attempt to pay it back by following in the footsteps of Bhagavad Pada and reading his Sahitya. So with these few words that I have learned with the grace of my Gurus, I will stop here. इत्येषा वाङ्मयी पूजा श्रीमच्छङ्करपादयोरर्पिता तेन देवेशः प्रीयतां मे सदाशिवः तव तत्त्वन्न जानामि कीदृशोऽसि महेश्वर यादृशोऽसि महादेव तादृशाय नमो नमः मङ्गलं स्तम्भडिम्बाय मङ्गलं मृत्युमृत्यवे मङ्गलं रौद्ररूपाय नारसिंहाय मङ्गलम्. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lalitji. In fact, the second session is much more heavy or dense compared to the first one. But as you mentioned earlier, I would reiterate that we might have to, in fact, we will have to revisit.
That is the intent. The intent is that you will have to go back to this. It should not be something that is closing and manana.
True.
It should be something that should, manana needs to happen.
Absolutely. And especially towards the end, what you mentioned, I think, was very, very essential to bring the point that ultimately it's just the way, the technique that the teacher adapts or adopts rather to bring the point across. But ultimately, the basic tenets are all the same. Basically agreed upon. Wonderful. So once again, I would like to extend our gratitude on behalf of Indica Moksha. Thank you so much. And we would look for the next opportunity to have you once again on our platform to speak on some other topic. So with that, we would conclude this session. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.